Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video. Today I'm doing a collab with Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. If you don't know her, she's an amazing, mostly romance booktuber. She has some amazing romance recs, historical romance, office romance. She knows all about the romance, y'all. So go check her out. Her channel will be linked below, as well as her video in this collab. For this collab we shared our favorite books, so I have read 2 of her favorite books and she has read 2 of mine, in hopes that we can branch out and find books that we don't usually pick and maybe find some new favorites that way. So I got to read Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn, as well as Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn is a historical fiction romance and Can You Keep a Secret is like an office romance. So quite different types of romance books. And just to tell you a little bit about my own experience with reading romance, I think I have read 3 adult romances, like contemporary romances, and 2 historical romances, one of which I gave 5 stars and one I gave 3 stars I think, or maybe 2 stars. So quite a mixed bag, but my shelves definitely have a lot more fantasy than romance, so I was on board with this challenge to read some romance because I have only really had good experience with it so far. One other thing that I just want to point out before we start this video is that this is a non-spoilery review. If you have not read these books, you can still watch this video and hear about my thoughts about the book. With that said, I'm gonna start off with talking about the book that I read first, which is Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. This is about a girl who maybe has a little bit too many secrets. This story starts out when the main character, is in Scotland and fails miserably at a job opportunity, and while on the plane home, the plane starts shaking and goes through some bad turbulence, and without thinking about it, she opens herself up to the passenger beside her, who is by the way a handsome man, and starts spilling all of her big and tiny secrets to this man. You know, she thinks she's going to die, so she doesn't think that this is going to matter. So when she goes off the plane, they survive, all is great. She goes to work the next day and finds this man that she spilled all of her secrets to in her office, and she finds herself in a bit of a tricky situation. So I'm starting off with the good things, why I liked this book. It was very easy to read, it felt very quick to read. There were short sentences, it felt very personal, and that way I went through the story really quick. There was also a lot of stuff that happened in every chapter, like small little plot hints or details sprinkled throughout the story that made the book very fast-paced and wanted me to turn the page every single time I finished a chapter, and I wanted to read more every single time. And being a fantasy reader, I'm not that used to short sentences, personal sentences, and something new happening every single page. A lot of the fantasy I read are long books with a lot of details, descriptions, and plot that continues through a trilogy, and this was very different from that. So back to the sentences and the structure of the story. This is a first-person romance novel that, combined with the short sentences and the real emotions of the character, that made me feel really connected with the character, and I really felt like I was in her head, and first person lets you do that better than third person. It made the book better because I was feeling all the emotions the character was feeling, and that made the stakes much more high in my opinion, and that made me emotional a lot of the times that the characters were. Like, because of the fact that it felt so personal, I laughed. I was about to cry. I didn't cry, but I was about to. And I really felt like Emma, the main character, was telling her story personally to me, or that I get to be in her head and she allowed me in there to see or tell her story. So that was a really pleasant surprise when going into this book. And the last thing I want to point out, that I think this book, being I think a adult book, or it's a YA romance, I don't really know, but with that said, I think this book is suitable for adults as well as young adults, as well as older people, but especially younger people, because there's no explicit scenes. There's talk of sex and there's talk of alcohol, but that's more talk than show, and I do believe that people in my age, maybe a little bit younger, could read this and appreciate it as much as older people. So the only con in this book that made me not give this 5 stars is that because of the main character and how honest she felt, and me being inside her head and, you know, knowing all of her secrets, she felt really fleshed out and alive. But that took away from the romantic interest in this book, and I felt he was really lackluster. He was charming and romantic, but the whole idea of this book, as well as like you shouldn't keep secrets, is that she spills all her secrets, and at the same time that he knows all about her, she doesn't know that much about him. And I know this is part of the plot, and I know this is part of the book. But that doesn't mean that I have to like it, you know? So when I don't know anything about love interest, how am I going to connect with him and their love story? That's the only reason why my rating is 4 stars. A conclusion to this would be that I really enjoyed the main character and I enjoyed her whole character arc. I love the theme of the book, the whole not keeping secrets, or what happens if you do keep a lot of secrets. And I loved seeing her evolve through the story. And if I'm really honest, it was funny. I would definitely consider this a very good book because I read it really fast and I really enjoyed the main character and like all the stuff in this book except the love interest. So now I'm going to talk about Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn. This is a historical romance and my 3rd historical romance I have ever read. So Just Like Heaven by Julia Quinn is about Honoria Winstead and Marcus Holroyd. Honoria Winstead grew up in a large family, but being the youngest sister in the family, she often felt alone and she used to go after her brother a lot and his best friend Marcus. So these two characters have known each other their entire lives. And then Marcus finds himself in a near-death situation and Honoria is his only connection to a family. She goes to be with him and we get to see how their friendship grows into something beautiful and then maybe, you know, something romantic as well. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is I absolutely loved the kind of enemies to friends to lovers. There wasn't really enemies, but I loved how they went from knowing each other but not being really friends to being friends and then growing to something more. I absolutely loved that arc in this book, and I don't usually read a lot of friends to lovers situations, but I must say I think Julia Quinn did an excellent job with portraying how the characters felt being friends and how suddenly there was more feelings towards each other. I absolutely loved the moment when one of the characters realized shit. You know, I love that, even if it's friends to lovers or enemies to lovers, that moment when they realize their feelings towards each other is always some of the best parts in a book. So from the prologue and the first chapter of the book, I initially thought that Honoria was going to be a quite unbearable main character because in the prologue we get to see her as a child. And you know, children can be very obnoxious and annoying, and Honoria was definitely that as a child, but as soon as I got to read more from her point of view, she was a great MC and I absolutely fell in love with her. I don't know, Honoria and Marcus were the perfect characters for this story in my opinion, and throughout the book I grew to love Honoria and I grew to love Marcus. So it actually took some time before the two characters actually began to be romantic with each other, but that didn't matter in my opinion, because the time before they began to feel these romantic emotions towards each other, that time was just as well spent as the time after, because we get to see their friendship building, and that was just as important to this book as the romantic parts of the book. With that said, that was all the good things about this book. Now I'm going to talk about maybe 2 things that I didn't like about this book or that I thought was weird. So I don't really know how to feel about this. 2 or 3 times in the book, I think it's in 2 scenes, but Julia Quinn switches POV in the middle of a scene without marking with a symbol or something between the paragraphs. I've seen that in a lot of fantasy when they mark either some time has taken place between the scenes or if the POV switch. So I saw none of that in these 2 particular scenes. There was just a big paragraph, and in the middle of the paragraph I all of a sudden hear from Marcus' mind. I hear his thoughts, I can hear his or read his feelings, but just 2 sentences before I was in Honoria's head and I heard how she was feeling, and we're not supposed to be able to do that in my opinion, because all of the other scenes with the 2 have been like in their head, 3rd person. We don't get to hear other characters' feelings or thoughts, but all of a sudden she switches characters, and I didn't like that at all, because that took me out of the story and I was forced to go back like 5 times in the text to be able to find like if she indicated a POV switch or if I missed something, if the chapter actually was from like Marcus's POV and not from Honoria's POV. But that wasn't the case. Either I'm really dumb and didn't notice, or she actually switched POVs. But that was definitely something that took me out of the story. This is also really small, but the plot twist that kind of initiated the end of the book, like the plot twist before the climax, I guess, that was so dumb and out of place. I felt like the main character forgot all that she has felt in the last 3 chapters and all that the love interest has shown her. She forgot all about that and just jumped to her own conclusions, and they had been so good at communicating because the fact that they were friends and used to talk very freely towards each other, they had been so good at communicating that it felt really out of place, the plot twist that happened, and it felt really stupid. But once again, that didn't take away from my final thoughts about the book, because I gave it 5 stars. Are you surprised? This book was so funny and it filled my heart with joy reading this book because it was so heartwarming and wholesome. And you know, sometimes in a book, in a romance book, I can feel the chemistry and sometimes I cannot. In this book I felt it. I felt that the two characters fit together perfectly. Overall, I absolutely loved this book so much and I have been gushing about it quite some time now. So this was my first ever Julia Quinn book, and while I don't want to read the Bridgerton series, really, I would love to hear your Julia Quinn recommendations in the comments below if you have any, because I would definitely love to read more. I definitely understand why these two books are Lisa's favorite books, and I definitely do trust her recommendations. So if you have not checked out her channel, like I said, there's a link below so you can check out some more of her romance recommendations. And with that said, this was such a fun experience to be able to read her favorites and discuss them with you guys, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about this collab, and please leave some romance recommendations below because I need them. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to check out Lisa's channel and her video where she reads my favorite YA fantasy books. Leave a like, a comment, and don't forget to subscribe because I post a new video every Thursday, every week. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!